The FIFA World Cup is coming to the soccer capital of America in the summer of 2026. Kansas City has a long history of game-changing sports moments, and this will add even more fuel to the momentum that's been propelling our city forward over the last decade. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our region and surrounding communities, from the West Plains of Kansas to the mighty Mississippi in eastern Missouri. To make the most of this opportunity, we'll need to unite as a region. Hosting the FIFA World Cup 26 is projected to create $650 million in direct event impact. Plus, it's an opportunity to deliver Kansas City magic, rise on the world stage, and leave a lasting legacy. The regional and bi-state investments we're making today will help us make a long-lasting impact on the region. This will also ensure we provide a safe, seamless experience whether you're a fan, visitor, or local. This is our time to show the world what we already know, that we're unstoppable together.
Welcome to the first Community and Journalism Forum. Really, we're making history here today. 50 years from now, people will be asking you, were you at the first one? You can say you were. So you're making history here today. Give yourselves a round of applause for making some history. Here. Yeah. We got a great panel today to talk about the whole idea of how these guys are going to cover the World Cup. 650,000 visitors, teams from all over the world. You can only begin to imagine the challenge this is going to be for news outlets here in Kansas City and those coming from outside the city. But with that, let me introduce our panel. On my far right, your left, Maddie Fox, she's the news director at KCUR. Next to her, Hannah Wise, she's a managing editor at the Kansas City Star. Marleah Campbell is the sports director for KCTV5. Cody Tapp, Cody in gold, he's at 96.5 The Fan. Give our panel a round of applause for taking some time here today. Yeah. Well, I guess the first question is maybe the obvious one. Marleah, I'll start with you. This is a daunting task, covering an event this big. They say it's like 97,000 Super Bowls all happening at once. How are you sizing up this event? How nervous are you about it? Yeah. What's coming at you here?
Yeah, I've heard. So I was at the World Cup draw, which is where this all kind of starts in Washington, D.C. in early December. And I was standing with a gaggle of Argentinian reporters. This is right after we found out that Argentina was probably coming to Kansas City. And they said, well, have you ever covered a World Cup before? And I said, oh, no, but I've covered 2 Super Bowls. And they literally laughed at me. And they said, really? Okay, well, that it's the equivalent of me being like, well, I've covered a rec basketball game before. Like, it's night and day is what they've told me, that the entire country gets into it. And it's been described as 6 Super Bowls in Kansas City over a couple of weeks. So wow. I don't know if we are fully prepared is the wrong word, cognizant of like how big this is. So we spent a lot of time. I mean, our prep started really years ago when the pitch came, but certainly fired up in December with news managers meetings about how we wanted to tackle this. And it's part of almost every meeting that we do. And I think it's a lot of prepping as much as we can, knowing that we're prepping for something that it's going to be a lot of getting prepared as we can so that when we encounter unexpected obstacles that I know we will, we've done as much as we can on the front end to get ready for something like this. Yeah.
Hannah, grab the mic. How are you sizing up something this big?
Yeah, I think very similarly. We don't entirely know what's coming at us, but there's going to be other stuff also happening in Kansas City. About the same time that the World Cup starts, the Morton Amphitheater is opening. That's a really big deal for our community as well. I think the Star is the largest newsroom represented on this panel. So we have about 60 people on staff, and then we'll have 10 interns this summer. So we're right now working on what does our schedule look like? How do we have coverage? We're not just looking at what's happening at the matches or what's happening at FanFest, but we see our role as a Star, our community and being of service to Kansas City is our primary focus. And that also means, yes, celebrating that this is a huge event, but holding the city leaders accountable to the promises that they made in order to get this bid. There's a lot we don't know, and we're going to be rolling with the punches.
Hand it to Maddie. One thing that Marleah said, this idea that you guys don't even really know what's coming at you. Do you feel like you know what's coming down the pike here?
I think we know the broad strokes of what the concerns are going to be. I mean, housing and transportation. We've had a lot of conversations about whether the city needs to build jail capacity. We've had a lot of conversations about health capacity. I know a lot of health systems in the area are doing, they always do like a certain number of like mock trainings type things. What am I looking for? Like exercises. And so they're positioning more of those around the World Cup. So we have a sense of what's going to be at play, but in terms of what's actually going to happen and how that's going to play out, no idea. No, I think like it's very much a lot of unknown unknowns. And I have had a conversation recently where I was trying to explain, I think Kansas City's media environment, Hannah and I have actually talked about this, is we seem to be alarmingly better prepared than, say, Miami, which should really be used to this kind of thing and is a very big international soccer city. And I think part of that is that for Kansas City, this is the biggest event, bar none. You look at like in LA, you look at a Miami, you look at a New York and a Chicago, they've seen, maybe not World Cup level stuff, but I mean, Olympic level stuff, all those kinds of things. They host big international events way more regularly than we do. And so what that means is both that Kansas City doesn't know how to prepare for this. They're preparing as much as they can. And we don't know how to prepare to cover this. We're preparing as much as we can. But I think it also means that we seem to be taking it a little more seriously because we're like, this is crazy. And we know we need to be prepared for like the worst possible scenario.
Yeah. Send that mic down to Cody here. Cody, your sports radio, which is a different kind of medium. How are you preparing? How can you cover an event this big on sports radio?
Yeah, so it's tough because you would think, do we just talk more about the matches? And for us, that it doesn't even necessarily translate to that kind of coverage. We'll spend more time probably talking about U.S. soccer or how they're doing in those things, or pay attention to the teams that are close. But it ends up being a lot like what they were talking about, where it's like the Kansas City angle is more what we care about than anything else, which means the things we'll talk about more are, nobody can get a bus ride to the airport. That was just wrong. Or she was talking about the jails. We were just the other day talking about the story, I think from the Star, saying that they're delayed in building a temporary jail that they were trying to build for the space, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about those things just the same as they would. And so like from a coverage perspective, we'll try to get people at the matches and get social content and do the things, but also the credentialing is a disaster. We to this day don't know who will be credentialed. I gave them DNA samples, and I don't know whether or not we'll be on site or if they'll put us at Kauffman Stadium and you can just look and wave at Arrowhead, or the things that kind of come with it. And so like as we prepare for it, we're really torn, and a lot of the meetings we have are, do we want to do stuff that are for Kansas Cityans who don't want to deal with it? Or do we want to do stuff for like be where people are? Because it's hard to say, hey, we're where it's super busy, come see us. Or do we do stuff like as a station where it's like, we'll be 30 miles from the trouble and you can still hang out and we can watch the matches, but not where everyone is.
So what are you going to do?
I think it's going to be a combination. Honestly, we'll end up doing events, I think, in both spaces. We'll do match watch stuff that will be far away from Power and Light, far away from the Fan Fest, like in the OP area or some other parts where we'll say, hey, want to watch, want to hang out, want to be a part of the community because it's here, but don't want to try to find a place to park or take a bus or transit or any of that stuff, we'll offer you that. And then we'll probably try to do one or two things. Like we'll have a presence down at Fan Fest and we'll send some people down there. I think our biggest issue is like, unlike we don't have a 60-person staff. So like social's huge for us. How do we cover it? We don't have a full-time social media person who covers just our station. They cover the building, and so certainly can get stuff on there, but then we rely on the hosts or the producers or stuff like that to do it. So I don't think we've got a good handle on the scope of that.
Help me, because your station, you dissect Chiefs games,
Yeah.
You dissect Royals games. Why wouldn't you be dissecting what happens on the pitch in the World Cup?
So if it's a U.S. match, we will. But like we do everything, like local sports talk radio is very like micro. The same as like, I don't talk NBA. Like the NBA playoffs are in town. We try to talk NBA for more than 5 seconds and our audience revolts. And so there's an audience for it and there's a few people who still care. The US matches we will. And I do think we'll pay more attention to the matches that take place in Kansas City. But it'd be more from like a entertainment or vibe, like more the coverage of the thing that took place, not what the score was in Algeria versus Argentina. Like that itself.
Is there a lack of interest in soccer itself that's driving that, or is it just the lack of the local nature you're saying?
It's that part. It's the local part.
Yeah, okay.
Because like soccer's continued to grow. It's never been like, I've been around long enough that 20 years in a row, it's been like, just wait, it's going to be bigger than everything. And it's still huge. This will amp it up in Kansas City. So some of the things we talk about, what you're saying is, do we need to do more soccer coverage knowing that more people in it? But we also have like specialized sold things. Like Matt Beasler will come on every week, right? Or they were pitching every day for him. And so like there is a point that we will do more soccer coverage than we've ever done. So like it'll still be more, but because we do 4 hours a day, it doesn't have to be all consuming.
Yeah, okay. Marleah, how long ago did you at Channel 5 start planning how you were going to approach this mega event?
Yeah, I would say we do a news managers meeting every December where we kind of go off site. And I think those were our first conversations of like, okay, this is here. And we did a little soft launch with myself and a photographer, went to DC for the World Cup draw, as I mentioned. And that was our first time dipping our toe in the waters of FIFA, which it's actually reassuring to hear it. And I assume that you all are also struggling with communicating with FIFA. It is, if we deal with the NFL, if we deal with the MLB, if we deal with the NCAA, we know exactly what those pathways will look like in terms of communication, troubleshooting, basic credentialing. FIFA is a different language in a bad way. They're very bad at communicating and not only have a unique process as opposed to just traditional American sports outlets and kind of how those major event credentialing processes work. But so we started in December, and those conversations have been going on every week since. We've done a lot of big picture planning in terms of our newsroom is very much, and I learned this at KCUR, which is my first internship, a best idea wins newsroom. So we've had a photojournalist who pitched a social documentary of sorts where she's covering the World Cup through 60 second vertical videos. Like unique ideas like that we've been working on to lead us up to the World Cup. We've also done strategy in terms of, we're the only television station on this desk, security when it comes to live shots, which is going to be huge. We usually have a photojournalist and a talent. We're adding a security member for every two-person crew just because of the uncertainty of densely populated areas. And then when it comes to like the day-to-day planning, we've adjusted staffing accordingly. There are a lot of matches on Saturdays. Typically, news stations are less staffed on the weekends. That's reversing. So we've done that sort of preparation to set us up for success. But like you all said, there are some problems we anticipate. Transportation is certainly one of them in Kansas City. So how do we plan on being in spaces where things will be happening and covering? Maybe it goes well. I doubt it, but maybe it does. So we want to be in those areas at the right time. So that's the prep that we're doing.
You know, this idea that FIFA's hard to deal with, what's your take? Is it arrogance because they're so big and so wealthy and they don't really care, or what is it?
I think it's, if I had to guess, I think there's certainly some kind of cultural difference. When I was at the World Cup draw, again, I cover the NFL probably the most in person, and I know exactly who I'm talking to. I know the security process. I know where we go, where I'm allowed, where I'm not, what my credential means, where I can go, the access that I have. All of those knowns are out the window when it comes to FIFA. I will say communication is an issue. Like when we had to deal, here's an example. When I credential my team for the NFL, I submit my credentials, those credentials get approved. Then we can go to said game. In FIFA, you apply for a credential, which if it gets approved, you can now apply for the event that you would like to cover.
Wow.
So there's a second. So when I got approved for the FIFA World Cup draw, it's like, great, we're going to the draw. And then I looked at my credential portal and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think I have a media ticket to actually cover said event. So it's language differences like that.
So you got to apply multiple times to cover.
There are multiple hurdles to approve. And like Cody alluded to, like my social security number, I had to take a passport style photo, their background checks, barriers that don't exist in, again, the traditional leagues around
Well, maybe the
that you're
problem is you
used to.
couldn't really pass your background check.
Yeah,
Marleah.
maybe. Yeah, maybe I'm the only one
That'd be
that-
my guess. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
I will also say we're directed a lot to a like a media troubleshooting page where it's like, if you have questions, they say, well, have you submitted your request through the whatever portal page? And I did one a couple days before the FIFA media credential deadline, probably 5 days before, and I got a reply 17 days later that said, I'm sorry, but the deadline has passed. And I was like, I know, that's why I submitted my question 5 days before the deadline. So those kind of things have been tough.
Well, Hannah, Maddie, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maddie.
I think part of what I think about with FIFA too is we are not their audience. They do not care about local media. They barely care about our national media, to be honest with you. Like we are, I think some of that, especially for the men's game, is like we are kind of new in the soccer space as the United States. We are not a historically good team on the men's side. And our soccer media is, I would say, lacking compared to a lot of other countries. So I wouldn't even already say that like national sports reporters who are at all these games, who are doing all these qualifying matches, are their highest priority. And certainly local media is not. They're not worried about us.
Is that changing the way you think about how you're going to cover this event?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
well, and to be fair, like as Hannah talked about as well, I think, and Cody, I mean, we were always going to be a little more locally focused. We're interested in what our audience is interested in. We're not going to just cover, suddenly become like a sports media station, national and international sports media station because it's in our backyard. We were always going to care more about the local angle, but certainly like the way that they're tying our hands with even dipping a toe into that national area with finding a seat. We can't get a photographer in because we're a radio station and they won't let us do photos because we're classified as radio. Never mind that most of this stuff is going to live on our digital website anyway. I think that has really required us to double down and to think a lot more creatively. Like the other thing, and I don't know if you guys have run into this, but I was trying to get credentialed for FIFA Fan Fest, and they wanted proof of a FIFA credential. And most of my newsroom is not eligible to get a FIFA credential because you have to have covered a professional soccer team, either at the country level or the club level. I have, like 2 other people in my newsroom have. I'm the news director. I should not be the person who's going to FIFA Fan Fest, but we might end up that way because I am the only one who can qualify for a FIFA credential that I still don't know I have.
Wow. Yeah, Hannah, talk a little bit about how the Star is approaching the coverage, how you've begun planning for this thing.
Yeah, sure. I think like the FIFA, like the credentialing is obviously like a very real thing for us. We have, I want to say it's like 15 writers who have applied for the privilege of getting a match ticket, and like because they have been approved for the FIFA credential, we'll be able to get folks into FanFest. We have, I'm counting, I want to say 4 or 5 visual journalists doing stills and video who are also credentialed. Likewise, we don't know about matches, but we're at least going to be able, that credential will get us into the base camps or any like FIFA sanctioned event. So that's, what did I say, like about 20 of our 60 humans. So like they're going to be priority doing FIFA things. I mean, I think KCUR did a really great story about Cameron, Missouri. Like there are all these towns in the greater, like far greater Kansas City area that are also trying to capitalize on this, on just the people coming. To what Cody said, like there are people not trying to be in the thick of it. We still want to meet with those folks. But we will have people who their assignment is to be nowhere near what's going on. We saw this with the shooting at the Super Bowl parade. We intentionally have people nowhere near the action in case something bad starts to happen, because then we're able to respond very quickly. So that's some of the planning that we're doing. Eric Adler, one of our enterprise reporters, we sent him up to the airport yesterday with a visual journalist because they're decking the airport out with all sorts of posters and streamers and things.
Still only in English.
But still only in English. Famously about our airport, only in English. But Eric was up there, and while he was there, he's a great reporter and a great storyteller. He's just chatting with a food service worker who's like, I'm really stressed about this. We do not think we're going to see the same audience that people are talking about. So Eric's got another story that hopefully by the time this panel is over, it will be posted on kansascity.com. But at the same time, we're going to be having people asking politicians, talking to Mayor Q. We have an election coming up. We have Chiefs camp that we'll go straight from World Cup to camp for Chiefs into the midterms or primaries in August. So I was saying to our executive editor when I was driving over today, I don't know when I'm going to have a day off. And that's what I signed up for, and it's going to be fun.
Well, but let me ask one more, then you guys can start asking. I want you guys to start asking questions. But if there's a sleeper angle to this event, maybe Hannah just hit on it, and I'm beginning to sense it from my perch at KCUR. There's so much concern that we ain't going to have 650,000. It's going to be some number far less. Part of that is because of President Trump's policies putting bounties, or we'll call it what you will, on the Algerian national team to come here. They got to pay $15,000 a piece to ensure that they actually leave the country once the games are over. Is that the sleeper angle here that you're sort of wondering that might become the big story out of this event? And
yeah, I mean, I think that some of that, I think also if you go back to sort of journalism 101, following the money, we're talking about the buses. Who's paying for these buses? Where are they coming from? Cody asked, who's driving them? There's all these sorts of you can sit in your newsroom and just write on the whiteboard any question that we have as journalists. Odds are someone else in the community is going to be having that as well.
So for some of it, and I guess what we've learned, anybody who's covered, even in radio or print, whatever number they tell you, that number is for their benefit, not for yours. So I was just in Pittsburgh for the draft. They were like, it was 800,000 people. I don't think so. I was just there. I don't think that was 800,000 people. I was in there in the downtown area between the two. They estimate those numbers based on aerial shots of congestion of people. They often overestimate what the overall economic benefit of almost any project. The Royal Stadium. They're like, here's what it'll produce, $10 trillion in economic benefit. I'm like, it won't. We know it's not that number. And so what is the real number, or what is the impact in it? And then the metro part, you guys were talking about New York or LA. Kansas City's really spread out. So will we feel 600,000? If it is 600,000, will we feel it in our city the way a more congested, Pittsburgh's a more congested downtown.
Right.
It's 300,000 people, but they all live in a closer knit, tighter downtown area than us. Will we feel it the same if half of the people staying in Kansas City are in Overland Park and half are in Lee Summit? And it's really hard to know where it'll be spread out. But the numbers are almost always inflated.
It's a lot of creative math.
Yeah. They and again, it's all estimates, or it's based off of, they don't count every person who comes in. And so there's this number of, you don't really know what it's going to be like. And I've been around some events where they thought it was going to be bigger for their business or bigger for the local area than it was.
The NFL draft is a classic example of that.
Yeah, the draft is again, 800,000. I don't think it was 800,000 people. I don't think we'd be able to move to the city. And it was busy, but it's just there's still a limit of what will it actually feel like? Because if that was 800,000 people and we're going to get 600,000 spread out over 2 weeks, I'd say it won't be bad.
Yeah.
It won't be that bad. I got around the city. I had a place to stay. It wasn't insanely priced. It was high, but it wasn't crazy. It won't, and we were just outside. We were 15 minutes outside of downtown. We got a place at any place we went to go get a drink or eat, or it wasn't, they weren't charging higher rates. None of it. It was all fine. And so a lot of it is how congested downtown, where do they congregate? And we all assume they'll congregate Fan Fest, downtown, Power and Light. But at the same time, there will be people, as we mentioned, who will try to avoid it.
Well, this uncertainty really cascades downhill. I just was on a panel the other day with Rick Truman of the Folly Theater. He runs the Folly. And he's thinking, well, I want to book the theater. It's right downtown on 12th Street. I want to book that theater, get some music acts in here. But then he's thinking, well, we don't know, would people come? How much money do I lay out to pay these big acts in advance if we don't really know how many people are going to come? And I was thinking to myself, if Rick Truman at the Folly is thinking that, how about people selling T-shirts, people selling food, people selling everything? There's so much uncertainty out there Are you sensing, it sounds like you're sensing that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like two things. Like, so NFL draft in 2023, we had a story. So our newsroom is at Crown Center. Right now, we are depicted in the Royals stadium pictures. We'll see how we still have a building. But I know. The roving newsrooms. But we had a story during the draft that this business in the sort of around the draft area, they had staffed up because the city was like, there's all these people, you're going to need extra staff. They made $17 the whole weekend of the draft. Later that summer,
Wow.
Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour comes. There's no like formal plan for organizing all of the Swifties across 2 days in Kansas City. The economic impact in Kansas City was astronomical compared to the draft because all of these fans are booking hotels, even if they don't have a ticket to the actual show. They're going to get $13 tattoos in Lee Summit. They're like going to go like eat at wherever they want. They're going shopping. Like that sort of spontaneity that comes with people just coming to have a good time can be really good for the city. You talked about like arts organizations. Toriano Porter from our editorial board is writing a column today about an international dance group that they're coming to Kansas City for an unrelated event during the World Cup time. This group has told Toriano they cannot get a hotel room, not because they're not available, but because right now the rates are prohibitively expensive for this group of people coming to dance. So it's going to be a really good story. And I think that gets into this, like right now in almost May, nobody's rates have changed because everyone's still optimistic. I think as we get closer to June and like reality sets in, that could be very different.
It's interesting. Maddie, do you want to hop in here or no? Or not?
I mean, I'm happy to start taking student questions.
Yeah. How about questions from you guys? Come on. We're journalism students here. Yeah, Jazz.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Summers, editor-in-chief of Weird News, and also interning with KCUR 5, so big idea. I kind of just wanted to know what kind of opportunities, since I know you talked about how you don't even have like a social media person just for your station, right? What kind of opportunities were you guys going to have for students or just anyone that's interested within your companies this summer?
So, like for us, we're just now starting to talk, too late probably, admittedly, on the social end, starting to talk about that possibility. It was probably around COVID where like interns became less of a thing in our building and we had to fight for them more on occasion. And so we've just had less of that in our station, even though we're a station or a cluster of 4 stations, right? We have more than just one person handling it. So I do think we're going to start looking for people, but for our building, interns or people, we have to hire them. Like the way our corporate structure works now, we're not even allowed free labor. Or we couldn't just say, hey, you want to do a social media internship, send us some stuff, we'll give you a chance. You're going to put your name on it, put your face on it. We have a large audience. You'll get a chance to grow it. We have to bring them in as an employee. And so we started to look at that now about posting positions, at least as part-time opportunities. But we also have like a decent sized crew of part-timers that we'll try to just like take away from like physically running a board or running a Royals game or filling in for the things they might normally do, and instead task them because they're already with us. And so like it'll be a little bit of a mix for us.
I would encourage folk, we're in the same way, where we hire interns and pay them, which is how it should be. But what I would offer people, if you're interested in specifically going into television or if you're looking to get your voice out there, is this is an opportunity to do things yourself. Like, I think about Ali Trost, who everyone on this panel probably knows. She works for CBS Galasso now. She's
Stuff for both stations.
Yeah.
Both sports radio stations.
Yep. Yeah. She started with nothing. I mean, she had zero reel, which in television you need a reel to get into kind of showing what you can do on camera, what you sound like, your presentation style, your storytelling ability. Ali started by asking Sporting Kansas City if she could go on the field and set up a phone on a tripod and bought a little cheap mic off Amazon, and now she's working for CBS because that first thing she did built her reel where now she can show the next employer and the next employer, local radio. She was the voice of sport in Kansas City. She worked her way up, but she started on her cell phone with a cheap mic she bought on Amazon. So you're going to be able to cover this event even if you're not formally with a news outlet. And if I'm hiring, I was in Topeka before this, which is a little bit more of a starter market. At Channel 5, we require a little bit more experience. And I see somebody who took an opportunity like this that we're going to have in Kansas City this summer and covered it through their own social platforms and YouTube and all of these things. That's impressive to me to see that kind of initiative. So that's what I would encourage students to take advantage of.
That's neat advice. It's really good advice, yeah.
No, I'd agree. Like, I mean, when you see an opportunity, take it. Like, the worst thing that can happen is somebody says no, like, which isn't that bad. At the Star, our summer internship applications are posted in the fall. So fall before. So we have 10 spots and 250 students applied in the fall. So it's kind of if you do not get it, keep applying, is the other thing I would say. But I think students cannot get opportunities that way. And also, we sometimes have some freelance things. We don't have a ton of freelance budget, but we are posting a lot of jobs right now. Currently posted is a Gen Z culture reporter position. There are 150 people who have applied for this job. So
wow.
Yeah, I know, which I'm very excited about. Taking us a little bit to get through the applications, but please apply. Last summer, we hired our first vertical video content creator, Alexa Stone. She was not a journalism student. She went to Mizzou for health science, then got a master's in sports media, and then she did a fellowship at ESPN. And she's from Kansas City. We were looking for someone who can be personable and wants to be on camera for the Star in Kansas City. And now she'll be on a panel that we're at an event we're doing with KCUR.
Good plug. Yeah, we similarly have an internship process. We have hired our summer intern from Kraske's class on the news desk. We are also pretty limited in freelancing, not necessarily for budget reasons, but because we are a licensee of the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and the contract work for getting somebody in our freelance pool is somewhat onerous. But, I think it's a good time to think about unusual places to pitch this kind of stuff. One of the things I think about is the Kansas Reflector covers Kansas politics. They do not have anyone who's suited to cover sports and anything like that, but I bet they're going to want some of that coverage because there's going to be a team in Lawrence. There's going to be there has been a lot of talk in the legislature. I mean, the Kansas and Missouri both declared a state of emergency, and they've covered that. But there are outlets who do not have any prep for this, and they're a lot more flexible for pitches and stuff like that. So I would look at places that maybe historically don't cover sports. Or don't cover this kind of culture stuff and see what they're interested in because this is such a massive event.
Yeah. What else we got?
Do you all have business cards with you?
Oh, I hope so.
Oh, I hope so.
They'll jot them down, or I got email addresses for all of them. Yeah. I'll sell them to you high prices after the thing. Richard?
With the increasing amount of people that are about to come in from different countries, coming here to support their international teams, do you think that the language barrier that Kansas City might have, specifically with reporters or just general people working in public services, not being able to translate or not being able to help them understand their language, would that be difficult, or is that a problem that's going to be upcoming?
Oh yeah, I worry about this constantly.
Culture.
Yeah, and cultural barriers. Obviously, there's been some reporting recently on a lot of places are just adding an automatic gratuity because we are one of the few places that still has tipping as an established part of your salary and your pay if you work in the service industry. But I mentioned earlier that everything in the airport is in English. We've been watching that. Every time we have a reporter fly, they'll look around, and it's distressing to me that stuff is only in English. It should at least be in Spanish, French. I mean, those would be baseline. I mean, Dutch. you can probably get away with English just because of the prevalence of English speaking
Right.
in the Netherlands. But like at minimum, we should have stuff in the languages for the people who are coming here. I do think that some of the like cultural institutions around town are trying to make up for that. But one of the things I think about too, when you talk about the Folly Theater and are they going to put on an event, how the hell are they going to market it to the people who are visiting who probably don't even speak the language? Like they might love to see a Kansas City music production, but how are they going to find out about it? It's just, I do think the language barrier is a huge problem. I don't think Kansas City 2026 or city leaders have given a good enough answer as to where that is and how they're dealing with that. And that's something that worries me a lot.
Yeah, I think like the cultural competency, I lived in Munich, Germany, and so like I was kind of hoping that the German national team would be here because I am fluent and can speak with them, but Dutch is similar. But like there's a lot of things that are different between life and how we operate in the US to any of the countries that are going to be represented in our community. England is staying in Prairie Village and they're practicing in Swope Park. Those are two very different versions of Kansas City, and I think that they may be surprised.
Madison, hop in here. Yeah.
Going off of the cultural differences, do you think that it could be a problem, or how different cultures coming into town might view women and reporters at the same time, and that could be a problem for Kansas City residents?
I mean, honestly, like,
Hannah, repeat that question. Would you please can you just
So
summarize it real quick?
Give me one sentence.
Just how people coming from out of town, like international countries, might view women and or reporters.
Oh yeah, I think it's the question of how people coming in might view women or reporters, and I think that that's going to be true. Like I think that people will be hopefully the athletes and their coaches. Like typically, if you're in a professional setting, you've had some media training, but even covering professional teams, like for women especially, like it can be a little dicey depending on the team or the person. I'm also really worried about the gun violence in Kansas City. If you're coming from Europe, you are not used to the access to firearms that it happens. Yeah, it's going to be very different for them.
People from Europe.
Yeah.
And most of the world. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think I worry about it much less, like she said, from the professionals in an organization. I mean, especially like we're talking national teams and the people who work for them, they have had a lot of exposure. As to fans, first of all, I think jury's still out on how many international fans we actually get. That is the squishiest part of the $650,000 person number.
How are we going to find out what that number actually is?
Great question, Steve.
Are we going to be able to find out?
I don't know that we will get an official number, because I'm certain that the numbers that FIFA and KC 2026 and the city give us will be inflated, or will be the most generous possible read.
To Cody's point,
of those
yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
We've been looking at, and I know the Star have been looking at like hotel occupancy rates, uptake on those short-term rentals, flights, trains. But that's the other thing too, is like there's, I know St. Louis is adding additional international destinations, so some people are going to come over on the Missouri River Run or Amtrak or rent a car, and it's going to be really hard to tell. But that does bring me, speaking of renting a car, I am honestly way less worried about the attitude towards women coming from most of these countries, and way more worried about the total innavigability of Kansas City's highway interchanges and international drivers. Have you ever, like, getting on 71 highway, most of the times you merge, there's like no room to merge. You just gotta like kind of hope and pray. How the hell are they gonna drive in that?
Yeah.
It's hard for me as someone who's lived here 3.5 years. It's hard for people I know who have lived here their entire lives. That terrifies me.
Right. Marleah, what about the language thing?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and I can speak to your question, I think.
Yeah.
I started as the sports director for the CBS station in Topeka, and now I'm the sports director for the CBS station in Kansas City. I was the first woman after 65 years in Topeka to hold the job. I'm the second in Kansas City.
Wow.
And I'm in a lot of male-dominated spaces. So as soon as you ask that question, I'm like, I get it. I view it as an opportunity. I think it's, my first market was rural Kansas, and I was the first woman to hold that job. So you can imagine a lot of people weren't very excited about it. And when I announced that I was leaving and coming to Kansas City, I had one email from this guy who lived in a small town in our market who said, "I'm ashamed to say I was upset when you got the job, and you've changed my mind."
Oh, good for you.
That
girl.
was one guy.
Good for you.
You know, I hope there were others. But I think if you're doing any coverage, or for the women reporters in our market, I think most of us have a very thick skin. And if those attitudes are present, I think this is a fun opportunity to maybe change a couple minds.
Marleah, how did you, just going off for a second, how did you handle that? This notion you were the first woman and
Yeah.
the pressure that came with that and how you navigated that?
Yeah, so I wrote my master's, this is divulging a little bit, but I'm diverting. I wrote my master's thesis on Title IX and media attitudes. And a lot of the excitement when I got the job was like, why did it take 65 years for this to happen? So a celebration of first, while also like knowing it shouldn't have taken this long. I did a weekly feature series when I was in Topeka called, it was leading up to the 50th anniversary of Title IX actually at the time, called 9 at 50, The Trailblazers of Women's Sports in Kansas, where I interviewed a different woman every week who pushed the needle forward in some way in Kansas. And so that emboldened me in a lot of ways of like, these are women who were protesting in the 60s when it was not the cool thing to do. Like the attitudes have changed so much to where like I'm celebrated for being a woman in this industry. But when they were pushing for me to get to this point, they were the nagging, annoying women who people were begging to shut up, and they did it anyway. So that emboldened me a lot. I think just a confidence in what I do. And being surrounded by supportive people, but and also just I think everyone in this job, whether you're getting comments on your web articles or whatever, understand that when I got this job, there was a comment on one of the Facebook pages that said women can't understand the nuances of sports like false starts and pick and rolls, which false starts can be determined by context clues. And pick and rolls, I played Division I basketball. So those kind of things you just let roll off your skin, I think, or roll off your back, yeah.
I think that's worth a round of applause just right there. That's great. That's great, yeah. Kenneth, did you have your hand up?
I do. I was
He can roll a camera and ask a question at the same time. That's Kenneth Walker.
I'm a digital journalist student. I graduated in May, by the way. The question that I have for you all is, we've been talking about sports and World Cup coming. Do you feel that Kansas City itself is going through what I call World Cup anxiety? Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody is worried about it coming. The highway, the driving is all messed up. Sometimes when I drive through my own city, I'm just like, hey, I can't wait till this is here and gone. You know what I'm saying? And they aren't even here yet. So if you could speak on what you see as World Cup anxiety in Kansas City.
I think that summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about very well from a coverage perspective of like we're preparing a lot, but we don't really know what we're preparing for. And I think that's my understanding is that's the temperature tap of the city too when it comes to, a lot of people are hosting meetings about like Airbnb if you want to sell out your house or we meet with KC 2026 every week, and a lot of those questions are anticipatory without knowing the realities of what we're going to be facing. So I think World Cup anxiety could be a moniker to describe the 6 month period.
There's a lot of things that are going on that seemingly don't have anything to do with the World Cup, but actually they do. For instance, the little alcohol bottles.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
What is that all of a sudden? They're coming up with different rules and different laws. I feel like in anticipation of World Cup coming.
And I'm sure there are a lot of those things that you may not be able to put a finger on. They are related to the World Cup. We've had a reporter on that story for a very long time. That it's a fascinating thing on its own. But I think there is this general unease. So I think a lot of us, especially from the media perspective, are just ready to start and just know what we're covering instead of trying to kind of run our gears and get ready for something that we don't really know what it is.
Cody, comment on that, what you're hearing from your callers and
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes from the same reason a lot of people don't like change. Typically in a city, people would just prefer to live their lives, have nothing alter their normal commute to work or their favorite bar or anything else. And so what we find is, and this goes to the same thing as when we were talking about the airport or when the Chiefs are changing their stadium or the Royals are changing their stadium is people just don't generally like change. This is an upheaval of their normal operating thing. You had mentioned the hotels. For someone, I'm going to a dance contest for my daughter in Dallas at the same time the World Cup is. It was the same thing. It's a nightmare. Yeah. And you're like, well, this is triple what I paid last year. How do I justify the ends, right? And so, like, it's a real cross because, like, I find myself saying, but I still want Kansas City to grow. Like, I want Kansas City to be a bigger city or to have more things or to, for the same reason I wanted a new airport so that, like, cities have to move forward in some way. And so, like, this event for me, in a lot of ways, the way I justify it in my head is, let's move forward. So, like, but we run into, and you mentioned the callers, most people don't feel that way. In my experience, most of our audiences know I like things the way they are. I would like things to stay the same. And a lot of times if you throw it in their face when it's like, if at any other point in history you had said that, not great. And so, like, it's like a tough moving of the needle where hosting an event of this scale is a huge thing for the city. It might make people want to move here or see a city that they haven't been to before or those things. But convincing people of that, most people have the fatigue. They're fine, even the people who are fine with it, like, and we cover it. I'll be happy when it's done. The same as I'm happy when training camp's done. Like, I'll be happy when it's over with. It's not that I can't enjoy it, but, like, when it's over, to be like, okay, phew, like mission accomplished, right? You feel that way a lot of times.
But you are going to Dallas with your daughter, though, right?
Yeah. At the time the World Cup takes place, I'm staying in the exact same hotel. It costs 2.5 times what I paid last year.
He's a good father. Give him a round of applause. That's what we like to hear. Yeah.
It'll be awful.
Yeah. Go, Samir. Yeah.
So I know you guys talked a bit about how Kansas City is not as condensed, and a lot of the things I'm seeing from the World Cup versus Kansas City specifically is about the fan festivals, and they're really like aiming these towards Kansas Cityans to come. But how accessible do you think these actually are for Kansas Cityans to attend?
I don't, because maybe more accessible than normally going down there, because there will be more public transit than you've ever had to get down that way. So, like, the ability to go down there and park and be there, that's better than it's ever been, because there'll just be an influx of public transportation we're not used to in the city because of the sprawl. So that part will make it accessible. I also find that, like what you mentioned with the businesses, Kansas Cityans do congregate in those areas because that is the natural point of congregation. The same reason is every time the World Cup is on a national stage that isn't here, everyone goes to Power and Light, and you still have to push to get in. I do think that there'll be a lot of Kansas Cityans in those areas. There were in the draft. The Draft Fan Fest still had a lot of, like you mentioned, the international. I feel like maybe more for local even than the other. It's like your way of going without spending $300 to $2,000 to get into a match. Maybe you don't want to go through that trouble, but you can at least still experience it.
Yeah, and I'd say, like, FanFest itself, like, you can get in for free. You have to pre-register so that you have a reserved spot because they are capping capacity, I think, for safety purposes. How many of you went to the Chapel Roan shows? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. So it's in the same place. Yeah, no, me too. Same place as the Chapel Roan concerts. And so, like, it's a pretty big area. I think they've learned a lot from the draft, from Chapel, about how to set that up. I believe that tomorrow they're going to start constructing pieces of FanFest. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm curious about if they're going to close the road down. But you can register, get it. It's long, like 6 weeks. There are set days, there are themes. You can buy a ticket for $55 for a reserved area. Me and my millennial friends are going to see All American Rejects that way. Or you can get a suite for like $200 something. I'm not doing that. So I think it is a good pathway to something that is accessible because the tickets to the actual matches are prohibitively expensive.
And I mean, also when we're talking especially about like fans of national teams that are not the U.S. national team, and the communities that we have here who are going to really want to watch those games, whether they're being played in Kansas City or not, it's a way better opportunity to get like a group of friends or a community or a club together at FanFest than to try to get them all in the same area of a game itself, especially because as we found out, you couldn't actually you could like reserve your section when you bought tickets, but we're just now finding out like where your actual seats are. So good luck to anybody who was planning to like generally seat a whole group together but buying them separately. So I think the Fan Fest is going to be a lot more communal in a way that the games just can't be.
Richard, yeah. Go ahead, Richard.
So even though we've made like considerable changes within like the Kansas City infrastructure, with the recent flooding on like the different highways, with people taking into account that, again, we don't have as many hotels as we would like, even let's say if the number was not even close to 650,000, do you think Kansas City is prepared to handle those types of people and our infrastructure, handle it in any sort of capacity?
No.
They're trying.
There's your answer.
They're trying. They're doing a lot of things, but no. I mean,
all the construction right now, they're like, it's gonna be done by June, we promise.
which like an alarming amount of it started very recently, and I'm like, guys, the prices have only gone up. Like, are there enough contractors for all these jobs you're trying to do when you're all trying to do them at the same time? So the short answer is no. I think they've thought through a lot of it, and they're popping up a lot of stuff like the temporary transit that are trying, and like the special license for short-term rentals that are trying to address that problem. And it may be that we don't get so many people, and so that works out fine. But I think if we are prepared, it will be, 50% preparation and 50% sheer dumb luck.
Well, I mean, I think also like the bid, they counted hotel rooms and accommodations as far as Sedalia, Missouri, in their Kansas City area. So the theme of creative accounting has been very consistent.
We're an unusually small city.
We're one of the smallest ever.
Let me go in the back of the room with Connor, then I'll come up front here.
Games that are played at Arrowhead, how will this impact Royals games?
I think so.
That's me and you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think very recently, I think this is a little bit off record, but we've had conversations with people adjacent to the World Cup who said they probably didn't even know that those two things were in the same parking lot, to my understanding,
That
until
was the way I heard it too.
fairly recently.
The Royals are also they adjusted the schedule for one. Yeah. So the Royals are just on the road way more than they would normally be on the road during that time. But not all of it. They still have to play. This isn't like, I think it was in San Antonio for the longest time, where the Spurs would be on the road for the entire month because the world's biggest rodeo would come to town and they would use the facility. They're on the road probably, if it's normally a 50-50 split for that 6-week stretch, it's like 70-30. So they've already pushed them out of town far more than normal. But then in addition to that, they'll run into some problems. Yeah. Because of, and this is what FIFA doesn't like. FIFA likes to, the reason why they didn't realize in the same stuff, they would prefer to cover up Kaufman too. And now it doesn't have a legal name on it the same as that, but like they don't call it Arrowhead. It is Kansas City Stadium. They cover up everything that's ever existed that says Arrowhead on it.
Wow.
As a part of the way FIFA works. But they scheduled, the Major League Baseball schedules know about it, so they work around, it'd never be on a match day, but it might impact where you normally park in the stadium or those things, because they essentially set up like a tent city outside of the stadium. So like it might impact the way you like park.
Like concerts have been canceled.
Yeah.
Like, that we would normally see at Arrowhead during the summer. The Big Slick, like the celebrity softball.
That's not
game,
happening.
Not happening this year because of the security requirements that they have.
Yeah, they're just doing like a separate event that's away from the stadiums because of it.
Ike?
There's been a lot of talk, like I've seen about small businesses like hiring, especially restaurants hiring so much more staff. But then again, kind of with the draft, I think a lot of people did that and it didn't go well. Have you guys done stories or talked about kind of the revenue loss that's very possible?
Yeah, I think it's something that we're doing a lot of, we're reporting on a lot right now. I'll be honest, like our reporters are saying that business owners are reluctant to go on the record saying anything about it. So like this guy in food service at the airport actually going on the record is like a big win for us.
Yeah, I would just say I wouldn't be shocked if more businesses are preparing for the possibility of staffing up, but not as aggressively as they did for the draft because that went so poorly. I mean, people just didn't go out of the draft zone, really. And Kansas City, the real key there was that Kansas City stayed home. They were like, oh my God, there's a draft downtown? Absolutely not. I don't want to be anywhere near that. That's not going to be as possible during the World Cup because it lasts so long. I mean, that's summer in Kansas City. That's like the last months you get before it gets truly heinous weather-wise in August. So like people are still going to come downtown during that month and change. But I think businesses are being a little more cautious. I know the city gets very upset when you compare this to the draft and mention the problems that they had there, and they're like, it's not going to be like that at all. And jury's out. But they've also been putting more money into like the Open Doors program, and there's a program through the Kansas City Chamber that's trying to like connect local businesses to importers from other countries and stuff like that. So I think they're making more of an intentional effort to make it last, and the length of time puts the odds a little better, but I would not be shocked. And I don't know that we've gotten anybody to say this either, but it does seem like businesses are kind of a little more wait and see than they were.
Two final questions, then we have lunch in the back. Renee, maybe we'll be three more. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Renee. I'm a staff writer for Renew Assistant Newspaper here. Thank you guys for coming. My question is sort of about the end of the World Cup and how you guys started preparing for feature news story ideas of like, what does Kansas City look like now that we've gone through this, and kind of like what that looks like on housing, businesses, where do we leave them? Or are you guys kind of waiting until they get here to start thinking about those ideas?
I think a combination of both. We're definitely thinking about those bigger picture stories. We're not assigning them as much yet, just because we're trying to figure out even what happens during the World Cup and what needs to be followed up. But like one of the things that we've covered a lot in Kansas City is transit and public transportation, the defunding at KCUR, the very poor transit to especially get to leisure events or in Kansas City. So like to me that includes the airport, but also games on a non-FIFA basis. So there are definitely things we're going to be watching for, but we have not assigned them yet.
Yeah, I think similarly, we haven't assigned them, but we have a lot of questions. One of the things that we're kind of hoping for, so I forgot to say earlier, we are removing the paywall from all World Cup stories for the Star. We're owned by McClatchy, and there's multiple World Cup cities in our corporate network. And so this is a corporate decision because we think that we can both show our local readers who maybe have a subscriber relationship with us or not, like kind of what the breadth and depth of the Star's coverage could look like. Similarly, we do not have a full-time staff soccer writer who's covering the KC Current or Sporting Kansas City. I've been at the Star for 5 years. One of the first things that they asked me was, can you make the math work that it justifies having a soccer writer? Like, we really want one because we feel like it's the right thing to do. And I was like, I'm so sorry. The audience is not there to support that person full time. Mm-hmm. We're really hopeful that like this boost in interest will translate into more of that, but I have to follow the numbers on that.
Taylor?
What are you guys looking most forward to like covering, or is there anything you guys are excited to cover about?
No, I'm just
Like we've been real like doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Story that you're like, oh, I'm excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah. We have a sports reporter, Neil Jones, who was coming up at the end of his contract and extended a year and a half to be able to cover the World Cup. So I, as much as we are doom and gloom up here, because there are reasons to be, I think we are all excited. This is a once in a lifetime coverage event that a lot of people won't be able to ever cover. So I think as much as there is trepidation or World Cup anxiety, which is I'm gonna coin that term, I'm excited to cover matches if I get credentialed, which we still don't know 6 weeks out, but I would be the one to go. And I don't know what to expect in that regard. Again, I've been to a couple Super Bowls, and this just seems like otherworldly. So I'm also excited for the cultures that we're going to experience here. We really lucked out with the World Cup draw in terms of the teams that we got here and kind of the spirit that they bring with like the swells in the streets that we're going to experience. And I think that's a unique opportunity.
Yeah, it's probably, the cultural stuff is huge, as in I want to watch the Netherlands fans march to the stadium. You've seen that on TV. You've seen it in a World Cup. I want to see those things happen in your city. But also, like, the obvious. There's a decent shot that a quarterfinal match will have Ronaldo and Messi in it in Kansas City. That will be watched on a world stage.
Yeah.
So the idea that either I get to cover it or watch it from somebody who grew up in Kansas City and gets to see it, I am still very excited about those things and like the possibility of those things.
Okay, last question from Madison, then our panelists will be around if y'all have other questions. Madison?
Thank you. So I had a conversation with an economics professor, and she mentioned that the city of Kansas City was possibly incentivizing businesses to rent out buildings and like revamp them on truce because, and like cities around, are you guys familiar with that? Is that true?
Yeah.
Just like for the duration of the FIFA?
Yeah, it's opening doors.
Yeah. Open doors.
Open doors. Yeah, it's like a grant program. There's a pool of money. I think businesses can get up to $10,000 to take over the storefronts.
I want to say it's also on the plaza.
Yeah.
Pretty much any open.
Yeah, there might also, and there's some on Main as well,
Yeah.
I think in part because they're assuming that people will take the streetcar, and so they want to not have all these empty storefronts. Is that like literally window dressing? One could argue, yeah. So like it's I think if I remember correctly, like this is gonna cover some of the cost of a business, but like most leases for a storefront are annual at minimum, and the World Cup is 1 month. And so I think they're working with some stuff on the back end too, so like you don't necessarily get locked into a 2-year lease on a building using this grant program, but I think like it exists. They're hoping it will draw interest. I think more than anything, they're hoping that it will make it look like we do not have a lot of business turnover and poverty, yeah, and abandoned buildings and all that comes with that. So
Why truce?
I think
I don't see anybody like from World Cup or
coming to truce.
anywhere else in the world going through truce.
I mean, part of it could be like that is actually a very large bus line, so people are taking the Troost bus line. That's one. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, my economics professor told me it's because that's the route that like a special person from a different country is going to be taking to go watch one of the matches. So,
Like one specific person?
she said it was like some type of like royal figure or
Ooh.
something like that. So
That's
maybe
fascinating.
That was just like a rumor, but that's kind of what initiated the whole conversation.
Yeah.
They wanted to look good for this like high public.
It
It's also
definitely.
not that far off the corridor.
No.
It's not
Yeah.
that far off of where people
Right.
will be going or
Yeah.
heading to.
I think Troost is a main thoroughfare.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get around if you want to avoid the highways, which, as mentioned, are a disaster.
Hey, you guys have been terrific. Thank you so much for taking the time. Let's give them a big round of applause. Yeah, absolutely. It's just great.
Thank you very much.